Howdy folks, hope you've all had a great weekend and welcome back to another episode of Mingles with Jingles, where I actually don't have anything prepared to talk about this week. So, well, I guess we could probably start by talking about the incoming changes to World of Warships. It's always a bad sign whenever the World of Warships development blog goes quiet for a month, because you know they've got some big news coming, and the big news in recent weeks is the introduction of super carriers. Oh great, more aircraft carriers, just what the game needed. I mean, I suppose it was inevitable because they've introduced what are effectively tier 11 ships, or they're in the process of introducing super ships in the shape of battleships and cruisers and destroyers, so it was only inevitable that carriers were going to get their turn. I mean, you know, we could hope, but there was no way they were never going to do it. So they've announced two effectively tier 11 new carriers, the USS United States and HMS Eagle. And the gimmick of these two new aircraft carriers are that they get jet aircraft, although they come as a consumable rather than standard aircraft carrier squadrons, kind of in the same way that hybrid battleships and cruisers operate their aircraft. They're a consumable that's on a cooldown, but they're jet aircraft. Now, it was only a matter of time before we started seeing jet aircraft appear on carriers in World of Warships. The problem? Well, there are a number of problems, and it's to do with the speed. See, these things, they're jet aircraft, and jets made old-fashioned piston engine powered aircraft obsolete because jets are so much faster. And I was watching the video on the dev blog of these jet attack squadrons booming along at 340 knots, twice the speed of regular piston-engined aircraft. And at that kind of speed, these things can cross an entire map, corner to corner, in about 20 seconds. What made me laugh was, I'm quoting directly from the dev blog here, Eagle and United States tactical squadrons consist of a single attack flight, as they play the role of auxiliary weapon. Similar to hybrid squadrons, they become available a certain amount of time after the battle begins, and they take a considerable amount of time to prepare. Here's the funny part. Due to the small size of the squadron, it is worth avoiding long periods of anti-aircraft fire, as each lost aircraft reduces the effectiveness of the attack. Okay. It is worth avoiding long periods of anti-aircraft fire. Dude, if you're flying at 340 knots, there's no such thing as a long period of anti-aircraft fire. You're spending 2 or 3 seconds, at most, subject to anti-aircraft fire before you go into the attack animation and become immune to damage. And during those couple of seconds when you are actually able to be shot at, just to put this into context here, Tier 10 ships with what is considered strong anti-aircraft firepower, ships like the USS Salem, Montana, Des Moines, Worcester, ships like the German Schlieffen, the Hindenburg, all of these ships have an anti-aircraft damage aura that does around 400 damage per second. These jet aircraft are going to be vulnerable for 3.5, maybe 4 seconds, and they have 6,000 health. None of these aircraft are going to get shot down. So the advice given in the dev blog to avoid long periods of anti-aircraft fire is just absurd. These things are going so fast, none of them are ever going to be subjected to long periods of anti-aircraft fire. And here's something else about anti-aircraft fire that has always struck me as absurd in World of Warships, but is absolutely true, and I've never been able to understand why. You know, at the beginning of a battle, you're watching the countdown timer waiting for the battle to start. It reaches 0, and then you hear the captain of your ship say something like action stations or general quarters. Do you know what that actually means? That means that everybody on board the ship, and you could probably work this out for yourself, stops whatever they were doing, whatever their day job was, and goes to their action station. Along the way, every single watertight door and hatch gets shut. Any loose items that could potentially turn into instant shrapnel if the ship takes a hit get strapped down, and most importantly, all of the damage control, weapons and sensor teams close up for action and start loading their weapons, and you can see this happen at the start of the battle. As soon as the countdown timer reaches 0, the ship goes to action and you can see the guns being loaded. Except this doesn't happen for the anti-aircraft guns. I mean, it does in reality. The anti-aircraft gun crews start lugging crates of ammunition around to ready use lockers, and they close up and load up their guns the same as everybody else, but not in World of Warships. The anti-aircraft guns in World of Warships don't start loading until a hostile aircraft passes into AA gun firing range. And that can take a couple of seconds. Which means that at the start of the battle, hostile aircraft get a free pass, while the AA gun crews put down their cigarettes and tea and start actually doing the job that everybody else on the ship started doing as soon as the battle timer reached 0. Why? Don't know. I actually, when I was still a community contributor, posed this question to the developers on multiple occasions, and they never gave me a straight answer. And I strongly suspect the reason why they never gave me a straight answer was because the straight answer would have been because we want people to play carriers more, so we, go easy on carrier players. Bearing that in mind, with these jet aircraft, just 340 knot speed, 6,000 health, AA gun crews not bothering to do anything about them until they first fly inside the anti-aircraft guns attack rate, just forget it. Nobody's ever getting any of these things shot down. And that's what we need more of in World of Warships, isn't it? Invulnerable aircraft. Fantastic. Because that's the number one comment when anybody asks them what they enjoy most about World of Warships. Fighting against aircraft carriers with squadrons that may as well be invulnerable for all the difference your anti-aircraft so-called firepower makes. So, Wargaming heard your comments, and now they're giving carriers aircraft that actually are invulnerable. Do they even play their game? Well, we know they don't. That cat got let out of the bag a couple of months ago. World of Warships is really starting to go the way of World of Tanks. I'm talking about high-tier gameplay here. Super carriers with effectively invulnerable jet bombers. A perfect reason to avoid playing anything that can see tier 10 battles. World of Tanks is the same, and has been for a very, very long time. Well, they don't have jet aircraft in World of Tanks, obviously. Well, not playable ones anyway. But tier 10 battles in World of Tanks have basically just been whole lines of tanks with invulnerable turrets and no frontal weak spots go and hold down and spam and gold at each other. And yeah, a fantastic reason to not bother playing anything in World of Tanks that can see tier 10 battles. But here's the other thing. So let's assume that during internal and public test server testing, Wargaming somehow managed to be able to introduce super carriers and jet aircraft into the game in a way that doesn't completely further ruin the tier 10 experience. Let's assume that they managed to do that, and I have absolutely zero confidence that they will, but let's just assume that they will. Have you seen the aircraft on HMS Eagle? They're Canberra jet bombers. Now, these are jet bombers that did actually exist, and the Royal Navy did have them. And they're the jet bombers that you're going to get on board HMS Eagle in World of Warships. And I have actually seen them. When I was stationed at Royal Naval Air Station Yeovilton in Somerset, that's where the Royal Navy's Canberra jet bombers were stationed. All 4 of them. Do you know what they were used for? I'll give you a clue. It wasn't for launching bombing attacks off aircraft carriers, because they were too big to launch off an aircraft carrier. They required a much longer runway. The Canberras in Royal Navy service work for a unit called FRADU, which stands for Fleet Requirements and Aircraft Direction Unit. And what they did was tow target drones and conduct simulated attacks for units undergoing training under Flag Officer C training at Portland for big Thursday war exercises just off Portland. What they would do is the Canberras would fly in company with British Aerospace Systems Hawk T1 trainers, the same aircraft that the Red Arrows use for displays. So the Hawk and the Canberra would be flying so close together that you wouldn't be able to tell them apart on radar. And then once the Canberra was going to launch its missile, it would peel off and the Hawk would accelerate and continue towards the target, with the Hawk effectively simulating the missile. Great training. But we didn't use them as bombers. Certainly not off carriers. What we did use, and which would absolutely fit the description required for jet attack bombers on supercarriers in World of Warships, were Blackburn Buccaneers. I mean, if you absolutely must have jet strike aircraft on British carriers and World of Warships, then what's wrong with putting in the actual jet strike aircraft that the ship HMS Eagle used? Blackburn Buccaneers. Why are we getting Canberras instead? Aircraft that were never used in that role in the Royal Navy. Well, I don't know for sure, but I strongly suspect that they already have the model of the Canberra, and they're just too lazy to go to the effort of modelling the Blackburn Buccaneer. Because hey, if you're making shit up anyway, I mean, what difference does it make, right? Right. You really do have to hand it to Wargaming St. Petersburg. They are quite possibly the world's most efficient games developer. Super carriers in World of Warships, introducing the maximum possible amount of rage, grief and frustration to the player base, with the least possible amount of effort expended. Good job. Well anyway, in other news, and this is normally something that recently I've been doing at the start of the video, but well, the news about jet aircraft in World of Warships had just enraged me so much, and you know, it's only a matter of time before we start getting guided missiles as well, so. But anyway, house buying. So, I have some news, and I also don't, and it's a sort of good news, bad news situation. The bad news is that I haven't had any news, still not a word from the lawyers. Yeah. The good news, do you remember last week I said that I'd received a cheque back from the tax man, and it was way, way bigger than I was expecting, because the guy that I hire to do my tax return once a year, because I like to get it done properly, informed me that I could actually expect a tax rebate, probably based on all of the expenses, legit business expenses that I had to pay during the previous year. And then this cheque comes in from the tax man, and it's 4 times what I was expecting. So I thought, yeah, I'm not touching that. Not until I know for sure whether or not this is actually going to be mine to spend. And it turns out that it is. Why is that then, Jingles? This is actually kind of embarrassing. So, you are all going to think that I'm an utter idiot. And, you'd all be absolutely correct. Oh, how can I put this? Okay. For some weird tax reason, I have no idea why, but whenever my taxes get done every year, and I get the letter from the accountant telling me how much I have to pay and when, for some bizarre reason, the tax man here in the UK doesn't want me to pay it all in one go. Now, I could do that because, you know, like I said, I save most of the money that I earn, and I have been doing that for a very, very long time. You know, without wanting to repeat myself from previous videos, back when I was young and stupid, got myself into a lot of debt, went to the bank consolidated all my debts, said, okay, you pay off this much every month. It took 10 years to pay off all of the debts that I'd incurred in my early 20s, and then once I was no longer paying off a loan to the bank every month, rather than just enjoying all of this new disposable income, I just kept on saving it. And it was easy to do because I'd spent 10 years getting used to not having a lot of money. So I just carried on being used to not having a lot of money and instead saving it. So most of the money that I earn, I save. Not just because I have to pay taxes every year, but also because I wanted to save up and eventually buy myself a house. So, given that every month I put money aside not just for savings, but also to pay off the tax bill when it comes due, whenever my taxes are done, I am able to pay it all off in one go. But for some bizarre reason, at least in my case, the taxman doesn't like that. So the accountant, when they send me the letter letting me know how much I owe and when it has to be paid by, specifies what they call 2 payments on account at 6-month intervals. So I basically pay half of the tax bill, I think it's by the end of January in any given year, and the other half of the tax bill, I think it's at the end of July, or by the end of July in any given year. Now I have in the past tried to pay it all off in one go, and within days the taxman sent half of it back saying, no, you have to pay this 6 months from now. Take the money back. I mean, bizarre situation where you're trying to give the government money and they're saying, no. Not all in one go. Give us the other half 6 months from now. I mean, you know, I just want it paid so I don't have to have it looming over me and potentially forget to do it. And that's kind of what happened. Let me explain. So, I know roughly how much well, I know exactly how much I have saved up because I can check my savings account online. That's no problem. And year on year, I've been watching the amount in the savings account quietly accumulate. And then, I pay off the taxes and obviously it goes down. But after I've paid off the taxes, it's still more than it was because I've been saving every month than it was at the same point the year previously. And last year, I can clearly remember thinking, wow, I haven't been doing really well this year because I'm kind of still at the same amount of money that I was after I paid off my taxes this time last year. I don't really seem to have saved anything. That's really depressing. And there was a good reason for that. It turns out I'd actually paid the taxman 3 times without realising. How the hell do you do that, Jingles? Look, I never said I was smart, okay? There's a window, like a couple of months before the date that these taxes are due, where they will accept the money a little in advance. And it turns out I'd done that and forgotten. And then paid it on the date due. And then I'm sitting looking at my savings account thinking, wow, I don't seem to have saved any money this year. What's going on? I'll tell you what's going on, you moron. You paid your taxes 3 times this year instead of twice. How do you do that and not notice? Well, just be me. It's very easy. Anyway, the money came back from the taxman, and obviously it is all mine, which is obviously great news. I mean, obviously, unexpected money is always welcome, particularly when it does actually belong to you. But because I was kind of pushing the envelope, getting kind of close to the knuckle with the amount of money that I'm putting down on a deposit for this place, and it would have meant that I'd basically be eating beans in order to ensure that I could save up enough money to pay off the rest of my tax bill this year. But now I don't have to worry about that, so I can actually afford to get some decent furniture and not have to scrimp and save and still be able to comfortably cover the tax bill. So, result. All because I'm an absolute moron. Which occasionally has its upside. I'm heading back down at the property tomorrow, by the way. I've printed out the floor plans and I'm going to go down and mark out where all of the power sockets and the internet connection and everything is, and measure stuff up so I know where things are going to go and how many more power sockets I'm going to require, particularly in the man cave, which is going to be my working studio. No matter how many power sockets are in there, it won't be enough. And I don't just want to record video in there. I want to be able to get back to model making, which is not something that I've been able to do due to space limitations where I currently live. But I'm going to have one room set up dedicated to just making stuff, airbrushing, painting, you name it, as well as recording and editing video. So I'll be taking the camera down, and you'll probably see that footage in next week's episode of Mingles with Jingles. But that's it for today. I hope you've enjoyed it. And as always, take care, stay safe, and I'll catch you next time.